All right, привет, shalom, salut tout le monde, and welcome. All right, so I just wanted to make this video, give you guys an update on what's happening here, and we're going to talk about the upcoming book, Son of a God, Born in the Shadows of Empire. I might change the title to Born in the Shadow of Empires. I think that I'm going to change that name because, well, Christ was born in the shadows of many empires. But anyways, so this is my working title right now. So we're going to go through the book. I'm going to give you guys an update, and yeah. So let's start. First update. So give, send, go donation update. They unfroze my account. So what happened was, I guess somebody flagged my account. Okay. Maybe I need to turn my mic down. Someone flagged my account and it triggered an investigation on me. And I guess the people at Give, Send, Go froze everything. And after 2-3 weeks, they investigated me. I guess probably went through my content, saw what I was doing, and miraculously they unfroze it. Okay, so donations are working again. I passed the flagging, the investigation, thank God. And so that is working again. But it triggered like a fear in me because I'm fully dependent on Give, Send, Go. I'm fully dependent on you guys. And so what ended up happening was I started applying for jobs. And my last employment, like I've had, jobs ranging from whatever, from construction to farming to uh, steel building manufacturing, army background, stuff like this. But my last stuff was in U.S. freight logistics. So that's what I'm gonna go back to doing. So I did find a job here while my account was frozen. I didn't think I was gonna get it back, right? So I was quite shocked that they gave me my account back, and it's never happened before. Give, Send, Go is a Christian platform. Okay, so yeah, so thank God to that. But I found a job in Serbia, um, similar to my old job, but it pays a lot less. It's like 60-70% less than, because it's Serbia, it's cheaper to live here. Therefore, a lot of companies find workers here. It's a normal thing for Serbia. Instead of paying a guy in the States or in Canada, 4 to 6 thousand a month, they can just pay people here like 1,000 to 2,000 or something and get the same quality of work for way cheaper. So I did find a job. The best part about the job is my boss, the owner, is really cool. Um, and as long as I get all my work done, I'm allowed to continue working on videos and writing books from the office, right? So, um, it was really funny. I don't know if I should tell you guys this, but I thought it was really funny. So I was I was in the interview, and he wanted to know, like, obviously, why is there a Canadian American guy living in Serbia? I told him the story, little bits of it, and when I told him, uh, I didn't believe 9/11 was done by Iraqis and Afghanis or people from the Middle East. Oh, I mean, maybe some people from the Middle East. Um, he just shouted, like, cut me off in mid-sentence and said it was Israel. and and so right away I knew me and this guy we're probably gonna have a good relationship. Anyways, so the point is, I'm not going to be fully dependent on donations. Obviously, my goal is to start bringing in enough monthly donations that I can live comfortably, um, and just do this full time. But in the meantime, it's not too big of a stressor. I at least found some employment, and I'm going to try to balance the two. And luckily, I have loads of content. So we're going to go over the book, all the content in the book. All right. So yeah, so donations are up again. The book, I mean, I might need another month. I wanted to have it done today, but instead I thought I should do this video. And just to explain, like, the biggest delay right now is just the footnote section. I need to make sure this book is flawless. It has to be perfect. before I publish it. And unfortunately, I'm the researcher, I'm the writer, I'm the editor, and I'm the publisher. I'm everything in one, and I'm doing, well, thanks to help with the AI, I'm doing the graphics, okay? So I'm doing everything. And the editing is killing me because I have to keep rereading the book over and over and over and over and over, right? And so, and then the moment I find a footnote problem, then maybe I need to, or I need to add a paragraph or add something, it then moves the whole book downwards. And then I got to reposition all the footnotes again. Okay. Or I find something that should have a footnote, and then I now have to renumber all the footnotes. Anyways, guys, it takes a lot of time. All right. But the book is more or less finished. I just want maybe one, now that I'm working, it's really weekends, I'm going to be able to work on this. And so I'm going to try my best to have it done. Today was my last day off before I start. So anyways, we'll see if I can pull this off in a month from now. But in the meantime, there's nothing stopping me from going over the book. All right. And I want to point out that the book, anyone who donated to me, all my donors, you're all getting a free copy of the book, a PDF version. And I'm going to say, like, anyone who wants a free copy, you can just email me. I'll put my email below once the book's out. And it doesn't matter if you want to buy the book or not. Like, for me, it's not about buying the book. Obviously, I'd like you to buy the book, but I want you to want to have the book. Okay, I want you to want to have this book by your bedside, to bring it places to argue. All the footnotes are there, all the sources are there. It's all sourced. So when you have to engage someone in an argument and defend Christianity, defend the Gospel of Luke, defend the book of Acts, you've got the book with all the notes, all the sources right in your hand. But at the same time, I remember when I was studying, and there was a teacher I really liked. His name was Don Preston. And this is I'm not slandering or attacking anyone for being this way. I totally get it. You put a lot of effort, a lot of work, your life's research, your time, your life. You're not getting this back into a book. And it took your whole life to compile that, or, it took you a lot of time. And so I'm not against people who are selling that. Okay. But at the same time, and my situation might be, no, it's not really different. Like, I've been dependent on donors, at least for the last year. And any work that I've done or do, I feel like, because my livelihood depended on the labor and sweat, blood and tears of others, I'm not in a position to necessarily sell my work. My work belongs to all of you. Do you know, like, I mean, I don't even think I could, like, there's John, like, Jabs, Caleb, Selena, Kiki, there's Paul and Tia, Daniel, Aaron, Carl, there's Luca, there's two Lucas, Patrick, Ulrich, Edward, Yusef, Michael, Tom, Brian, Lucas. There's a guy who goes by a title Someone Random. There's so many of you guys. Sebastian, I think there's Sebastian, and then Amanda. There's two Sebastians, and then Amanda. There's so many of you guys that have kept me alive. I think I said Selena. Anyways, you guys, as Paul illustrates, that we are all members of the same body. And some are the hands, some are the legs, some are the tongue that speak, the head, the organizers. And I would be nothing without you guys who kept me alive. So now, why I brought up this guy is because I get that you want to profit off your labor. But when I was studying, and not just him, it's everyone, almost everyone I've studied under, they're going to make videos on their book, And then they're not going to tell you the whole, they're just going to give you a slice of the pie. And then if you want to know how it concludes, go buy it. And I get that. And I'm not attacking any of you guys for that. I mean, maybe a little bit. But when you're a Christian teacher, a Christian pastor, a Christian even priest, whatever, and your livelihood is fully dependent on people making those sacrifices so that you can eat and you have a roof over your head, I feel like I'm not in a position to profit off of this and put you guys in a position where I'm forcing you to buy my book. The Bible says, buy the truth and sell it not. And I feel like that's what I've done. I have bought the truth, and now I'm not going to sell it. I'm going to follow the book of Proverbs and what King Solomon wrote there. So the book is you can buy it, but I want you to want to buy it, okay? And all the guys who donated, I have your emails, so you're all going to get a free copy of the master copy. I sent you all like the first draft, but this second draft is going to be way better. Like that was just to show you guys I'm working on something. And I'll tell you guys what, like even if you don't want to buy it, you guys can just watch my videos. We're going to read the whole book. That's what I mean. So all I'm going to focus on now for the next videos is the book and questions and answers. So I'm going to answer your questions. I'm going to go between the two, answering your questions and also just going over the book. And people can email me. I'm going to, you can, once the book's up, you can email me. I'll be more than happy to send you a copy. Or you could buy the book or just watch the videos, because everything in the videos or in the book is going to be in the videos. And the reason I'm like this is because too many times was, in my life where I was studying and finding great pastors and great teachers, one was on the rapture, for instance, and he gave so much of the argument, but then left out the icing on the cake, the stuff I actually really needed, the sources and all that stuff I needed to make the argument against other people. And it forced me to have to buy his book. And I'm thinking, as Christians, especially now, we are at war. I'm not looking at this like, oh, this is a business or this is for fun. No, we are literally at war. Like, my situation's a little different because I'm coming from Canada, and Canada is like the Soviet Union. You can't, it's not but you could still like attack the prime minister and stuff. It's not like attacking Joseph Stalin. But if you say the wrong things or attack the wrong people, the true masters of Canada, yeah, you go to prison, right? You go to prison. You can attack the prime minister all you want, and you can attack, the politicians, because they're there specifically to take the punches while they protect their masters behind them, right? It's a shadow government. So anyways, that's all to say, no one has to buy the book. It's all going to be covered here. All right. So what is this book about? So we are going to go over the Gospel of Luke and how insanely accurate this book is. It is, the polemic, the argument has changed against us in the last, I would say, like 20 or 30 years. Before, you're being attacked, oh, you believe in a fairy tale, you believe in a fantasy, none of that stuff is true, Jesus never existed. Well, no, Jesus is documented by Greeks, by Romans, by Jews. It's not just the Bible where we have our sources, okay? And then the internal evidence inside the Bible, whether you're studying the Old Testament and you're studying the book of Exodus, you could clearly see that Exodus is taking place during the Second Intermediate Period. Whoever wrote the book of Genesis also is someone who had a profound knowledge in the Bronze Age, mentioning people like the Amorites and the Hittites, and mentioning the 4 rivers in Mesopotamia, when Bible's the only book in the world in antiquity that mentioned 4 rivers in in Mesopotamia, one coming from Arabia, right? Because one of them dried out. So the Bible kind of looks stupid for thousands of years because it's mentioning 4 rivers in Mesopotamia, that all come together where the Garden of Eden is, but there's only three, right? And so anyways, the Bible is a time capsule. It shows you that whoever wrote these books, the Greeks never wrote about the Amorites. The Greeks never wrote about the Hittites. The Greeks never wrote about the the Elamites who took over and conquered and wiped out the dynasty of Ur. The Bible preserves all this stuff. Anyways, so now the attack has changed. Now it's, well, the Bible's not a fantasy. It's so historically accurate that now we actually have to change our argument that it's plagiarized, it's fake, it was written by Jews in Hellenistic Egypt or in Persia or whatever their argument is. It changes from scholar to scholar. And I like that. I like that now they're forced to acknowledge that the history in the Bible is accurate. It's very accurate. But in this case, it's not. In this case, they're saying the Gospel of Luke is a fraud, he's a liar, all this stuff. So let's just talk about what this book's about, and then I'm going to go over what each chapter is about, and then I'm going to end with the preface. Okay, so I'm going to try to read the preface for you guys, and that's how we're going to end this week. And hopefully next week, or, depending how much time I have, I'd like to still do videos because, again, my goal isn't to work in freight logistics. My goal is to eventually be able to do this full time. Okay, so they are attacking the Gospel of Luke and calling Luke a forgery, a faker. On one hand, they call him a genius forger who was writing in the 2nd century, and he created this whole story, fabricated the whole thing. But at the same time, he was a total and complete moron. So there's this contradiction, is he was a meticulous mastermind genius who forged the documents, but he got all the history wrong. So he's both a total genius and a total buffoon, total blundering idiot at the same time, which is a contradiction. Okay, so he's either one or the other. And so what they're going to do is they're going to point at the English translation, meaning the King James Bible. And it says here, "And it came to pass that in those days there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing," apographé is the Greek word, "was first made when Quirinius was governor." It's hegemon euontis, okay, it's a present participle, of Syria, and all went to be taxed, okay? Everyone to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of the lineage of David, to be taxed, apographé, with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And then they're going to point at, well, the first thing, let's look at it like this. When you translate those words, so their argument is, or maybe let's go back before. Their argument is that Quirinius, very specific Roman general, was mentioned here, very specific Roman Caesar Augustus, and that there was that they know that that Quirinius was the governor of Syria in 6 AD, 10 years after the birth of Christ, or the death of Herod. Okay, 10 years after the death of Herod. So what they're saying is, well, Luke is a total moron who copied Josephus wrong. He was clearly copying from Josephus, and he just wanted to mention Quirinius to be smart, and that this happened under this taxation, which we know happened 10 years after Herod the Great. But so it doesn't make sense, guys. How could Christ have been born during the time of Herod the Great when this taxation under Quirinius happened 6 or 10 years later? But the problem is when you properly translate these words and you really look at what is being said here, is that it's a registration. This is a very broad term, and we're going to cover this a little bit more throughout this video, but it's a very broad term. It's just an enrollment, a registration, and every taxation requires an apographé, but not all apographs are taxations, okay? So we're going to cover that. And Luke is giving us a very precise marker. Caesar Augustus, Herod the Great. We cannot break what Luke is saying. And Quirinius. We have a triple padlock. We are looking for a time when Caesar Augustus was Caesar, or Augustus was Caesar, Herod the Great was still alive, and Quirinius was in Syria. Now, the trap is they're attacking the English translation. They're not properly translating the Greek. And when we start translating the Greek Bible, looking at the Greek words used, we know this isn't a taxation. It's an enrollment. It's a registration. It could be a tax, but it could also be something else. Okay. And when we look at that, and this registration was the first when Quirinius was exercising command in Syria. So the King James translators made a big blunder. They translated a present participle, hegemonuantes, hegemon. Okay, if it said hegemon, they would have maybe a slightly better case. But we're going to see that Luke is very precise when he gives titles. Very precise. He knows to call people, procurator or prefect or proconsul or whatever, or the first men of Malta or the politarchs of Thessalonica. Paul is precise every time when he's mentioning people's positions by their titles. He's not actually calling Quirinius here the governor of Syria, the hegemon, or the legatus in Latin of Syria. He's just saying a present participle, an action word on the verb. He's describing the fact that he was exercising authority. He was the one in command during this time. He's not saying he was the governor of Syria, and we're going to see that Syria was a very special province. Because Syria bordered onto Parthia, Armenia, and the Euphrates River, Rome's greatest enemy was there. And we're going to see no different than when Piso, a man named Legatus Piso, was the legatus, the governor of Syria. Tiberius sent Germanicus with the same rank, the same position, but gave him something called maius imperium, because in this region you needed two governors, one to sit at the desk and run the province. You needed a second man with the same authority to command the army. And you're going to see the same thing happened when Vespasian was sent. Vespasian was given the same title as Quirinius, hegemon. Josephus writes that there were two hegemons in Syria during the siege of Jerusalem. Munciatus was the governor, the legatus of Syria, but with the same rank and position, we had Vespasian, who was given maius imperium, command over the army, command over the region, while Munciatus was, operating and running the office. Okay, hang on 1 second. Sorry, guys. So actually, let me just pause this for a second. I gotta close my window. Sorry about that. They're doing yard work or something. I don't know, city workers. Okay, so the point here is that it is totally normal for Rome to have one guy at the desk while, where in this case it was Varus, Quintilius Varus, during the time of Christ. But if there's a threat in the region, Caesar always sends a second general to deal with the threat while the other legatus, is sitting at the desk. So Luke is not calling Quirinius here the governor of Syria. He's saying he was the one exercising authority, exercising command, and this was the first registration when Quirinius was there. So what Luke is acknowledging there is a second tax, there is a second apographé, a second registration, but this was the first one when Quirinius was here exercising authority. So what we have to prove is that Quirinius was actually in Syria at this time, and that there were threats in Armenia, that there were threats in the Taurus Mountains, and that Caesar Augustus can't leave the most volatile region in the hands of one legate. Okay, he needed a second guy. And we're going to see that with Germanicus, we're going to see that with Vespasian. It is very common, okay? And likewise, at this specific time in Roman history, Judea and Armenia were powder kegs. They were ready for war. Okay, we're going to talk about that later. So the next point is the Bible says, but a Pharisee in the council. So what's happening here in the book of Acts is the apostle, Jesus is dead, resurrected, and the priests and the Pharisees and the Sadducees all thought that, hey, if we kill Christ, we need to kill him. And I'm going to explain to you why they had to kill him. The movement didn't die. And so now they don't know what to do because they are scared. The Jews are terrified right now of this Jesus movement, and they have a right to be. To be honest, when I made the discoveries that I discovered, I thought they were just killing Jesus because he was exposing the Talmud or the oral traditions, the traditions of the elders. Writing this book, I discovered something way more profound, why they actually killed Jesus. And it's actually really sad. And you're going to see a big difference between the guys speaking here in this council and then the later revolutionaries that brought down the entire temple and brought down Jerusalem. So what's happening now is they've got the apostles, they don't know what to do with them, and they're scared to actually even kill them. They don't know what to do. They fear that if they kill them, they'll start riots and the Romans will come and destroy them. And why? What happened? And Gamaliel's explaining why. So in this council, while they're on trial, Gamaliel, a very well documented Jewish rabbi, one of the best Jewish rabbis of his time, he's documented well in the New Testament. Jews refer to him. I talk about him in the book. Paul apparently was a student of his. So what happens here is, but a Pharisee in the council named Gamaliel, a teacher of the law, held in honor by all people, stood up and gave orders to put the men outside for a little while. And he said to them, "Men of Israel, take care what you are about to do with these men. For before these days, Theudas rose up claiming to be somebody." All right. So the problem here is when you go to the records, Gamaliel speaking between 30 to 33 AD. Josephus records a rebel named Theudas who but claimed to be like a messianic figure, a prophet, and claimed he could part the Jordan River. And he amassed a big crowd of assassins, Sicarii, zealots, people. And then before he could even show his miracle, the Romans came with some cavalry, killed, took him, cut off his head, and it was over in an afternoon. There was no, it's just like a little paragraph in Josephus, but the guy had a very common name, Theudas. And Theudas is Greek for Theodotus, which means gift of God. That's what the name means. And so what they're doing now is, because Josephus didn't record a rebel named Theudas before 30 AD. Therefore, Luke must have stolen from Josephus, saw a guy named Theudas, and just wrote the name down. But notice what's going on here. Gamaliel is standing in 33 AD, giving this speech while the apostles are on trial. So now if we were to listen to Luke and not listen to academia, who is accusing Luke of being a thief, we have a padlock. We are not allowed to look in the future to events that haven't happened yet. We are forced to look backwards. Okay? And what we're going to find is something very profound and very interesting. Okay? So that's what the book's going to cover, all this when we get to that chapter. And then it goes to say, before these days, Theudas rose up claiming to be somebody, and a number of men, about 400, joined him. Josephus records 40 died. There's another event in 4 BC, the greatest revolt of its time. Gamaliel lived through it. Thousands of Jews were killed. Thousands were sold into slavery. It happened right after Christ was born. Okay? Christ was born in a war zone, guys. He was born, like, when you fully understand what was happening in all of Syria, all the Roman Empire at this time, Christ was born in a total nightmare. Okay, Joseph and Mary really have the greatest story never told. When I really understood, I want to write a book just on Joseph and Mary, like write some kind of historical fiction, because what Joseph and Mary went through is one of the scariest things I ever read about, I ever learned about, and it's not properly taught in church. So then, so the 400, Josephus records 40 were killed. Anyways, we'll talk about it later. So he was killed, and all who followed him were dispersed and came to nothing. After him, Judas the Galilean rose up in the days of the apograph, the census, the taxing. And now this is correct. The same word used here is apograph. It's the same word used in Luke 2. The problem is it's a broad term. You don't know, it's a registration. And Josephus himself will call this taxation an apograph. And we see that this is a very vague word because every taxation requires an apograph. Okay? So we're going to go over this. So this is where they're placing Quirinius, because Quirinius was the general who marched down from Antioch in Syria and arrested Judas of Galilee and finally had him killed. And Judas of Galilee is a very important guy in history. Okay, Judas of Galilee, his children would be the zealot and Sicarii leaders who brought down Jerusalem, killed all the priests, and are responsible for the temple being destroyed. Judas of Galilee's father was wrongfully executed under Herod the Great, when Herod the Great was a young man and governor of Galilee at the time. So Judas the Galilean here, his father was called an archelestes. He was the chief commander of the resistance movement. And Herod had him killed, and Judas, his son, never forgot what Herod in Rome did to his father. So this is an amazing... Game of Thrones has nothing on this story, guys. Nothing on this story. When you understand the blood feud between Judas of Galilee. And so understand what's going on in this story with Gamaliel. Gamaliel is hearing the name Jesus of Galilee, Jesus of Nazareth. Where, Jesus, of Galilee. And he's connecting it to Judas the Galilean, Judas of Galilee. Judas of Galilee was a serious dude. He was a serious guy who killed a lot of Romans, killed a lot of Jews that were pro-Roman. Judas of Galilee is one of the main guys we have to establish who he is, who his father was, and who his children are, because they're going to bring down Jerusalem. Okay? So, and Judas the Galilean rose up in the days of the apograph. In this case, it is a taxation, 100%. But apograph doesn't mean taxation. It's accounting. It's a registration. And history has to dictate to us what this word means. And under Herod the Great, in Luke 2, apograph cannot be a taxation because Rome had no legal jurisdiction to tax Judea under Herod the Great. Herod the Great was a client king and a friend and ally, okay, an amicus et socius to the Roman Empire. And with that privilege and that title, Rome did not tax the Jews at that time. In fact, when Herod the Great died, a delegate, an embassy of Jews went to Rome to petition Caesar Augustus and begged him, please tax us. So it's very illogical. This cannot be a taxation under Herod the Great. Apograph does not mean that. And so here in this context, we know it's a taxation. We know in this context, apograph is a taxation because Quirinius went down, killed Judas of Galilee, and turned Judea into a Roman province, now ready for taxation. Okay, so we're going to cover this. And he drew away some of the people. And that word drew it's like a military term. It's very different from Theudas, who persuaded. Okay, so Theudas is a teacher. Theodotus here is a teacher, where Judas of Galilee is a military commander. So this guy is a rabbi. Okay, and I'm going to prove that using the language of Josephus, using the language of Luke, that this is a very famous rabbi, gift of God, and you'll see. Okay, so he drew away some of the people after him. He too perished, and all who followed him were scattered. And they scattered, and they became the Sicarii. They became the assassins. Assassin's Creed, in my opinion, that game everyone loves, is founded on these guys. It's founded on Judas of Galilee, the Sicarii, the assassins, the dagger men. They are the original assassins, okay? They also existed before in Rome. It's not this term Sicarii. Anyways, it's very interesting. So then Gamaliel says, so in the present case, I tell you, keep away from these men and let them alone. For if this plan or this undertaking is of man, it will fail. But if it is of God, you will not be able to overthrow them. You might even be found opposing God. So they took his advice. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to cover all this, and we're going to use all secular sources to validate Luke, how accurate he really is, and how the entire argument from modern academia is based on a straw man, based on a poor English translation, not using the original Greek, not using what Luke and Josephus actually said. And they just built a straw man, and they're attacking their straw man and trying to just attack Luke for something he never actually said. Okay? So here are the chapters. We're going to go through them all right now. I think I have time. I'm already 36 minutes in. All right. Let's see. So let's start with the acknowledgements. These are part of the acknowledgements. So in the acknowledgements, I say, to my kameraden, you guys know who you are. Thank you for standing in the breach with me and for the unwavering loyalty you showed during the darkest of times. Okay, so again, this book could not be possible without all of you guys who helped me and supported me and walked with me during this great and terrible experience. To the community of supporters who stepped forward when I was silenced, deplatformed, and forced into exile, your generosity did more than fund this project. It kept me alive. You proved that truth cannot be extinguished by geography or by decree. Okay. I'm also deeply indebted to the generations of historians and faithful Christians who preceded me. My work is built entirely upon the foundation you laid through centuries of meticulous preservation, translation, and defense of the sacred records. To those who guarded the truth in the shadows of their own empires, offering their labor and their lives in profound sacrifice, I stand upon your shoulders. I am merely a student of the path you cleared. Okay, and I mean that truly. My deepest gratitude goes to the Republic of Serbia and its people. You opened your doors when others closed theirs, welcoming me not as a stranger but as family. It is a humbling truth that while the alliances of my nation once brought fire to these skies, the people below them brought me only peace. You gave me a home when I was a man without one, proving that the bonds of humanity are stronger than the failures of state. Okay, so that is, I owe a lot to Serbia, who allowed me to stay here, didn't arrest me, did everything. The people here did everything they could to make me feel welcomed, even though, during the 90s and early 2000s, we destroyed this country. NATO, America, Canada, Europe, destroyed Yugoslavia, and then ripped Serbia into pieces. Okay? It's a really sad story here, and I'm really grateful that I got to live here and learn and see everything for myself. Okay, so let's go over chapter 1. I'm just gonna read a brief paragraph on every chapter so you guys understand what to expect. Okay, so chapter 1 functions as a courtroom defense, arguing that the strict historical reliability of the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts actively push back against modern academic skepticism that dismisses these texts as theological fables. This chapter covers the remarkable administrative fluency of the biblical author, demonstrating how Luke accurately recorded complex administrative titles, shifting geopolitical boundaries, and specific historical figures of the first century Roman East. By cross-referencing his writings with secular records, archaeological inscriptions, and historians like Josephus and also Suetonius and whatever, the text verifies his descriptions of towering figures like Caesar Augustus down to highly localized officials like the politarchs of Thessalonica. The primary point of this section is to establish a formidable baseline of credibility for Luke as a witness. It argues that because he consistently and relentlessly gets the difficult secular historical details right, his primary account regarding the nativity and the life of Christ must be treated with serious historical weight rather than careless invention. All right. So in this chapter, we just go over the book is written in a courtroom theme. Okay, so when you're reading the story, I'm not just telling you the story of history and quoting historians. You are taken into a courtroom of history. You're going to see that in the preface. Okay, the book is written in a courtroom style where you are a juror, you, the reader, sit in a jury box, and every chapter is the defense and giving a defense against the prosecution. Okay, so that's how I wrote it. I wrote it in a courtroom theme. All right, and so in the first chapter, my job as the defense attorney is to establish that my client, my witness, is credible. That every time he makes a statement, he's telling the truth. And that he knows things so obscure and so crazy, things that we forgot, like the politarchs of Thessalonica, which nobody knew until recently when we dug up stones and artifacts that actually have the title, politarchs of Thessalonica. We see how so my first job in chapter 1 is to establish that my witness is accurate and that everything he said is true. All right, so that's what chapter 1 is about. Chapter 2, the historiographical precision of the Lucan text. Chapter 1, chapter 2, the sovereign tyrant and the Roman leash. Okay. Chapter 2 strips away the soft pastoral fable often associated with the Nativity to expose the absolute political terror of the first century Roman Empire. This section covers the blood-soaked reign of King Herod, an illegitimate Idumean Edomite outsider whose intense paranoia drove him to execute his own royal heirs to protect his throne, showing you that, Herod had the idea of him going to a small town like Bethlehem and killing all the children is nothing when he murdered at least 3 of his own sons. Herod was crazy. Herod was ruthless king. Okay. So the main point of this chapter is to dismantle the modern academic claim that Luke blundered the history of the Roman census, the tax. Okay. By applying strict Roman provincial law, the text demonstrates that during Herod's life, Judea was protected by a sovereign firewall as an allied kingdom, making a direct Roman property tax legally impossible at the time of Christ's birth. Instead, the chapter shows how the specific Greek word Luke used, apographé, points to an administrative enrollment. This event was actually a massive loyalty oath orchestrated by the narcissistic Emperor Augustus, who demanded the world swear allegiance to him as a false son of a god. Ultimately, this chapter sets the stage for the ultimate collision, a tyrant in Rome demanding the world bleed for his vanity, contrasted with the true son of God arriving in the dirt to bleed for the world. So I'm now setting the stage. In order for me to tell the story of the gospel, you need to know about the king ruling at the birth of Christ. And then the next chapter, the global dogma and the false son of God. We now have to go over the emperor. We zoom out a bit and now look at, what's going on with the emperor? Who's the emperor of this time? So chapter 3 examines the broader political and theological landscape of the Roman Empire leading up to the birth of Christ. This chapter exposes the terrifying reality of Augustus Caesar's rise to power, detailing how he dismantled the Roman Republic through violence and subsequently orchestrated a massive empire-wide imperial cult to cement his authority. It focuses heavily on the historical context of Luke's global dogma, the decree. Dogma in this context, the original word for dogma was a decree. It's a law. It's not like today when you hear the word dogma, you think of something that people just blindly believe in. That's, this is a word that is used to the decree that went out. The dogma went out from Caesar Augustus in Luke chapter 2. So the global dogma arguing that the universal registration was not merely a provincial tax, but a massive loyalty oath designed to prepare the Roman world for Augustus' ultimate elevation as pater patria, the father of the fatherland. Ultimately, this chapter highlights the profound theological contrast between the emperor in Rome, a false son of a god, who demanded the world bleed for his vanity, and the true son of God who arrived in Bethlehem to bleed for the world. Okay, so understand that at this time there is a global registration oath called the pater patria going on that finished in February of 2 BC, which means it was going on before. And this book shows you use it in Spain, in Samos, in Paphlagonia, in Turkey. The Pharisees, Josephus literally documented the Jews. 6,000 Jewish Pharisees refused to give this oath of allegiance. And so in order for them to know 6,000 Pharisees refused it, there was an apographé, a registration, where they were bringing everyone back to their homes to make this loyalty oath for the grand acclamation, the grand gesture that the whole Roman world voluntarily meant Caesar Augustus, the man calling himself son of a god, and made him the father of all nations. It's so crazy. It just contrasts everything about Christ and the Bible, where Christ came to point everyone to the true father of all nations, the true son of God, pointing everyone to God. The false son of God at this time was demanding the world call him son of a god, and he's the father of all nations. It's mind-blowing, okay? So that's what chapter 3 is going to cover. Chapter 4, the decree and the database. So chapter 4 covers the historical misunderstanding surrounding the Roman census, the tax, and dismantles the popular academic accusation that the Gospel of Luke confused a later property tax with the birth of Christ. It reveals how an early English translation accidentally collapsed a demographic enrollment into a financial tax, projecting modern financial anxieties onto an ancient political terror. The chapter explores the precise Greek and Latin administrative vocabulary to prove that this event was actually a massive global loyalty registration demanded by Caesar Augustus. It also explains why Joseph had to travel to Bethlehem. By looking at ancient Jewish land laws and the right of redemption, it becomes clear that returning to his ancestral home was a strict legal necessity to maintain his standing in the genealogical registry of the House of David. The main point of this section is to prove that Luke was brilliantly accurate, documenting the exact moment when Roman totalitarian machinery and the ancient Jewish law collided to set the stage for the true king. So a lot of scholars say this is insane. Rome would never issue a decree that forced everyone to go back to their ancestral homes. Rome made you go back to your home for the census. When Rome did a census, they sent the army into your region. Rome would have to go region by region by region by region. So to do the whole Roman Empire, it took years to do a census, a registration, or a taxation. And the army usually had to travel to these regions. The counters would go, and you would have to go to your home, and then the town officials and your neighbors would have to verify who you are. Rome was very strict on this. If Rome found out you skipped the tax, you skipped any registration, you lost everything and you were sold into slavery. And the 6,000 Jewish Pharisees that refused to give the oath made a prophecy that Herod's kingdom would be destroyed. He would be removed from power. And then Herod's sister-in-law paid the fine to Caesar for the 6,000 Pharisees. But many Pharisees actually, I think, were put to death and imprisoned for refusing to give the oath to Caesar. So this oath is documented in Josephus in exactly between 6 and 5 BC. We know because it happens right after Herod strangled his sons. Okay? So there's an oath going around in 6-5 BC, the same oath that's going on in Spain in 5-6 BC, the same oath that's going on in Paphlagonia in Turkey that was finally finished in about 3 BC, 4 BC. Okay? There's a big monument there that has the whole oath of registration right there in Greek for you to read, using the same words that Josephus used when describing the Pharisees rejected it. All right. So the point is, while Roman law didn't tell you need to go to your ancestral home, they said you just need to go to your home. Jewish law, Torah law, does say you have to go back to your ancestral home. So where they're right, Roman law says you need to go to your house, your domicile. Jewish law says no. Jewish law says everything is done through the tribal leaders, and you must return. In Leviticus and in the book of Numbers, the law is clear. You have to go to your tribe to do any registrations, to do anything like that. All right. Chapter 5, the dagger and the administrative square. Chapter 5 covers the violent shift in Judea from a simple registration to a brutal Roman property tax. It explains how the initial census before Herod's death was a demographic enrollment to secure loyalty to the emperor, not a financial extraction. However, the chapter details how 10 years later, in AD 6, Rome annexed Judea and instituted a direct property tax that triggered massive ideological fractures and violent rebellion. This taxation led to the rise of Judas the Galilean. Judas the Galilean was already active, okay? And the militant fourth philosophy, which ultimately paved the way for the Sicarii assassins. That's who Jesus was crucified with. Jesus was crucified next to two insurgents, murderers, most likely Sicarii, Lesti, who were dagger men killing Romans in broad daylight, or, excuse me, Roman sympathizers as well. Okay, so the main point of this section is to prove that the Gospel of Luke was not confused. The Gospel of Luke was not confused about these events. By examining the original Greek terminology used by both Luke and the historian Josephus, this chapter demonstrates that they both correctly distinguish between the administrative enrollment list and the latter financial valuation that caused the uprising. It shows that the true conflation of these events belongs to modern critics and translations, not the ancient writer. All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. That's what this comes down to. All apodomesis, all taxations are registrations, but not all apographs, registrations, are taxations. So Luke, using this term apograph in both sections, is correct Greek grammar. The problem is, in Luke 2, it can't be a tax because Herod taxed himself. Romans didn't tax the Jews during the time of Christ's birth. So that apograph can't be a tax. But the apograph he uses later, which Josephus uses the same word to describe the taxation. He has to add a word in to show you that this apograph was a apodomesis, a taxation. Okay, so we're going to prove that, dismantle these scholars. This is one of my favorite chapters, the Star, the Sword, and the Bureaucracy of Rome. So chapter 6 covers the intense geopolitical and astronomical realities surrounding the birth of Christ. It explores the massive tension between the Roman and Parthian empires and how King Herod's terror of a Parthian invasion fueled his absolute paranoia. Okay, so what people don't realize when they're reading the story of Christ is the Parthians, the Persians, are on the border of the Euphrates fighting, getting ready to invade Rome, and the Romans have their army on the same border preparing for a Parthian invasion or to invade across the Euphrates and attack Parthia. Because in Armenia, the king died in like 6 BC or 7 BC, and a pro-Parthian king was installed on the throne. And the Romans were like, no, no, no. So now the Armenians want to switch sides to the Parthians, and the Romans are like, no way. The last king was pro-Roman. Now they have a pro-Parthian king on the throne. Rome wants to put their guy on the throne. So the two global powers, the Parthians, who were undefeated, never lost the battle against the Romans, never lost a war against the Romans, I should say. The Romans chased them out, but Rome never successfully invaded and conquered them. Rome was always pushed out by them. Rome never, and so I'll just finish this and I'll explain to you. So by cross-referencing Caesar Augustus' worldwide loyalty decrees with precise Greek legal terms found on ancient monuments and the writings of the historian Josephus, the chapter pinpoints the true date of the biblical registration to the year 5 BC. Furthermore, it dives into fascinating astronomical records from the Chinese Han Dynasty that documented a brilliant nova in the exact same year. So, in the spring of 5 BC, the Chinese recorded a star that went nova in the east, in the constellation of Capricorn. Okay? And so when the wise men saw the star in the east, it lasted for 70 days. They knew Christ was born. And then because the stars are always moving based upon the seasons and they're rotating around us, or you could argue we're rotating around them, whatever your view is, if you're geocentric or heliocentric. By the time the wise men who were in Babylon had to travel 800 to 1,000 miles through the desert during the spring and summer, right? So that if they realistically left in May when the star had stopped, it would have taken them probably 2 or 3 months on a caravan moving slow during a war zone. Remember, as the Magi are crossing into Judea, into Syria, the Persian army, the Parthians are there, and the Romans are there fighting over Armenia. And if you think that Quirinius was the general who made the peace negotiations, along with Augustus's grandson. So Quirinius is in Syria, at this time. He's also putting down a revolution just north of Syria in Turkey. Okay, and in order to do that, he would need the legions from Syria. Okay, anyways, we'll talk about that. So understand that the Chinese documented a supernova that was in the east, and guess what? By the time the sky rotated, exactly when Luke suggests that the Magi arrived, by the late summer, early fall. We know that because of the language Luke uses, that the shepherds were out in the fields with the sheep, which only happens really at one time of year. It's after the harvest. After everything's harvest at the end of summer, the shepherds bring the sheep into the field to eat what fell and to fertilize the fields. And then in winter, they do the plowing and sowing. And so winter, spring, and summer, the sheep aren't allowed in the fields. It's only after everything's cut down that the shepherds bring the flock into the fields to manure. So it's a very specific Greek word because it's agricultural land that they're bringing the sheep onto. Anyways, so we know that Christ was born at the end of summer or early fall. And guess where Capricorn is? It's not in the east anymore. When they saw the star rise in the east, the sky had turned. And exactly at the end of summer, Capricorn is in its meridian, and the nova reappeared, which novas do that. You study a supernova, novas will flicker and stay in the sky for months, fade to nothing, and then give one last final burst. So that's why the star that the wise men saw in the east, by the time they got to Jerusalem, Capricorn was now in the meridian due south of Jerusalem. As they're marching south, the star reappeared right above them, right above Bethlehem, exactly where it should be. And the star that faded now reappeared, and they rejoiced greatly. So it's perfect, and the Chinese are the ones who recorded this. So you can't say, oh, the Romans and the Greeks or the Persians invented this. No, these are coming from Chinese records that in the spring of 5 BC, for 70 days, that is a very biblical number, 7 times 10, 70 days. The nova was in the sky. Okay, that is a very, very important number. Okay, spending 70 years in captivity or whatever, this, like Jeremiah, Daniel, anyways. Okay, so then this perfectly explains the journey of the Parthian Magi and the specific astrophysical behavior of the star, aligning flawlessly with the late summer agricultural season described in the Gospel of Luke. The main point of this chapter is to demonstrate that the physics of the universe and the heavy bureaucracy of Rome collide perfectly in 5 BC, setting a volatile stage that required Rome to send their most ruthless military commander, Quirinius, to lock down the frontier. So Now, Quintilius Varus, the legatus, the legate, the governor of Syria at that time, is documented as being a total idiot. And that is further proven with how he died. He died in 9 AD. He died later. He was tricked into marching into a German forest where a German prince named Arminius ambushed him, betrayed him, and wiped out 3 legions. Varus is documented, even by the guys in Syria, as being a total idiot. A guy that was born in aristocracy. He was born with money. He just preferred the leisure of the camp. He didn't like being out there. He didn't like commanding. And he robbed Syria blind. He filled his pockets and left. Quirinius, on the other hand, didn't care about money. Quirinius was a homo novus. He was a new man. He was born as a peasant or a low-born family and rose to the highest position you can. He was consul and won 2 triumphs in Roman history. He became like the top general in the Roman army, arguably at this time. And so for Augustus to let one legatus, one governor hegemon of Syria to be there, and an idiot to boot, it doesn't make sense that Quirinius or that Quintilius Varus was the only guy there. Especially we know that Quirinius was just north of Syria putting down a revolt in 6 to 3 BC. So he's there in 6 to 3 BC, commanding the Syrian legions in the Taurus Mountains. Then we know that between 1 BC and 4 AD, he's on the Armenian border dealing with the Armenians. And when Herod the Great died in 4 BC, revolts broke out everywhere. And so Varus could not have left Syria and marched south to put down the Jewish revolts of 4 BC and leave the border completely unguarded. And he had 3 legions with him. Someone had to have been in the north, and we know Quirinius was there. And we know Quirinius was the top general. And we know from Roman records that it was normal for Rome to have 2 legatus, 2 legates, 2 hegemons, 2 commanders in Syria. Okay? So don't let anyone tell you, oh, well, Quirinius was very much there at the birth of Christ. And he was a much higher general than Varus, and he would have been given Maius Imperium, imperial command. Anyways, I go into detail about that in the book. Where are we now? Chapter 7, the hegemon. This is about Quirinius and the Mountain War. So chapter 7 covers the famous historical puzzle surrounding the Roman commander Quirinius. For over a century, critics have accused the Gospel of Luke of a massive historical blunder by claiming Quirinius was not the official civil governor of Syria until a decade after Christ was born. However, this chapter dismantles that accusation by looking closely at the original Greek text and the brutal reality of Roman military command. It explains how Luke used a highly specific action word to describe Quirinius, not as a desk-bound politician, but as the active military general exercising authority on the explosive eastern frontier. While the official civil governor handled the paperwork in Antioch, Varus, Quirinius was the apex predator holding the line against mountain insurgencies and the Parthian Empire through a Roman system of dual command, Maius Imperium. The main point of this section is to validate Luke as a highly precise historian who accurately recorded the boots-on-the-ground reality of Roman warfare, perfectly setting the stage for the physical archaeological proof that follows. Okay. What else did I want to say? Yeah, and also keep in mind that Luke, it says in Greek that this was the first registration, the first apograph when Quirinius was exercising authority in Syria, implying Luke knows about the second that happened in AD 6. It's insane to think that Luke in chapter 2 is talking about the AD 6 apograph, which we know was a taxation. But Luke is saying very specifically proto. This is the before the Quirinius was governor of Syria. This is the first registration when he was exercising command in Syria. Okay. So chapter 8, the Secundus Stone. and the Ghost War of 4 BC. So chapter 8 covers the compelling archaeological evidence of the Secundus Stone and how to dismantle the modern academic timeline of the Roman census. It explores a military resume of a Roman officer named Secundus who conducted a massive registration and fought a violent mountain war in Lebanon under the direct orders of Quirinius. While critics try to force this military siege into the famously peaceful year of 86, this chapter demonstrates why that makes absolutely no geopolitical sense. Instead, it places this forgotten war perfectly within the explosive regional meltdown of 4 BC, right after the death of Herod the Great. The main point of this section is to prove Quirinius was already operating in the East with supreme military authority during the birth of Christ. It reveals how his military victory perfectly explains the exact regional map and specific rulers like Licinius the Tetrarch that the Gospel of Luke meticulously recorded. So that's another guy we're going to cover, Licinius the Tetrarch. It's amazing. This Tetrarch is like, it's a name you just read over and you don't realize how much that name means. And when you study who this guy was, who his family was, the regions his family's coming out of, it's insane. It's so amazing, actually. I can't wait to go over that with you guys. Chapter 9, the gift of God and the dagger of Galilee. Okay. Gift of God is Theudas. Okay. Or in Hebrew, his name is Matthias. They both mean gift of God. I cover this in the chapter. So in the next chapter. So chapter 9 covers the deep generational trauma that set the stage for the crucifixion of Jesus and the trial of the apostles. It traces a century-long blood feud that began in Galilee when a young Herod executed a rebel named Hezekiah. By exploring this violent history, the chapter reveals exactly why the Sanhedrin was so terrified of Jesus. The trauma of the survivors. The religious leaders were survivors of the brutal Roman crackdown. They looked at a Galilean claiming to be king and saw a political revolutionary who might bring the Roman legions back to destroy their nation. The charge of sedition. This fear explains why they framed Jesus with political treason rather than just theological heresy to force Pilate's hand. The genealogy of sedition. This chapter defends Gamaliel's famous speech in Acts 5, proving that his warning was about the rebel Judas of Galilee and Theudas. Proving that his warnings about the rebels Judas of Galilee and Theudas were historically accurate references to the violent zealot movements that happened before 6 AD and 4 BC. Okay, they cannot happen after. Gamaliel's looking back in time. The critics are saying, well, he put the wrong Theudas, and we're going to debunk all that. Okay. The main point of this section is to demonstrate that the Gospel of Luke perfectly captures the suffocating political tension of the first century. It proves that the actions of the Sanhedrin were driven by a desperate, calculated fear of the very uprisings that would ultimately lead to the burning of the temple and the fall of Masada. So again, this Judas of Galilee, super important. His father was the Archelaestes. He was the chief commander of the anti-Roman military movement in the mountains of Galilee. Understand that Galilee was the hub of terrorism. Do you remember the part in the Bible where it says, I think it's Nathaniel, he's sitting under the palm tree and he saw the light come through, and then someone came up to him and said, we found the Messiah, it's Jesus of Nazareth. And Nathaniel's like, can anything good come from Nazareth? The reason they're saying that is because Galilee, that northern part, that mountain region is where all the Jewish terrorists lived. That was their breeding ground. Josephus explains that the Galileans, the young boys of Galilee, are from birth raised to be soldiers. They were the best soldiers in Judea, were the Galileans. So understand that when the Pharisees and the Jewish priests are hearing Jesus, who's from Galilee, when Jesus is on trial, Pilate is like, isn't this guy a Galilean? Send him to Herod. Herod ran his own kingdom. Herod was the king of Galilee. Herod was not king of Judea. That's why, and I point this out in my book, I explain to you the jurisdiction difference. In Jerusalem was Roman law. In Galilee was Jewish law. It was Herod's law. Herod Antipas, Herod Antipater. So there's two jurisdictions. Like, the reason the Jews couldn't kill Jesus is because in Jerusalem it was Roman law. But the moment you cross into Galilee, you're now in Herod's son, Herod the Great's son, Antipater, you're in his territory. That's why John the Baptist was killed by Herod. Because Herod carried the Roman sword. Herod ran his own kingdom. Rome could not interfere with Herod, Herod Antipater. That's why Pontius Pilate's like, give him to Herod. Let Herod kill him. And then Herod's like, I don't want this guy's blood on my hands. You kill him, right? And so that's why the Jews had to go to the Romans to get him killed. Because Herod killed John the Baptist. If he killed John the Baptist, he can kill Jesus. It's because there's a jurisdiction difference. There's law, and Luke perfectly nails the legal borders and boundaries. To the point where when Luke is mentioning the coins, when Jesus says, give me the coin, it's written denarius. Whose face is on the coin? Well, Caesar's face is on the coin. Well, give to Caesar's what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. But the moment he crosses into Galilee or into Capernaum, they become didrachmas. They become a different currency. And now you're coming to the story of the money changers and how the Jews were taking advantage of the different jurisdictions and the different currencies and forcing everyone to pay in. Anyways, it's so deep and so accurate and so perfect. I cover it all in the book. Chapter 10, the final witness. Chapter 10 covers the final major accusation against the historical accuracy of the book of Acts. Against the historical accuracy of the book of Acts, specifically focusing on Gamaliel's famous speech about the rebel Theudas, or Theodotus. For years, critics have claimed that the author of Acts clumsily copied the Jewish historian Josephus and completely bungled the timeline. However, this chapter dismantles that theory by exploring the first century practice of dual naming and meaning for meaning translation. It reveals how the Greek name Theudas is actually a direct translation of the Hebrew name Matthias, pointing squarely to the famous rabbi who sparked the Golden Eagle Rebellion in 4 BC. The main point of this section is to expose the logical paradox of modern critics and prove that Luke did not make a historical mistake. Instead, he accurately recorded Gamaliel warning the Sanhedrin about the exact two uprisings that had traumatized their generation. All right, guys, so that's the book. There's also a preface. I'm going to read the preface. I think I have time. We're over an hour, but if you guys want, I'm going to read the preface now. If you want to listen to it, you can. And then, so anyway, so that's what this is about. We go over, we try to debunk and, show you that Luke is not an idiot. He's not wrong. He's so precise. And that academia is wrong. And and I point this out in my book. It's really sad, because I'm going against the top scholars in the world on this book. And I realized that I need to write books and then make videos on my books. Okay? And again, I'm just probably going to give the books away for free. If you want to buy it, you can. Great. Support me and have a copy of your, have all the sources and everything in a book form. But my main point is to arm you guys to prepare yourselves for this debate when it comes up. All right. And so we're going to completely neutralize the argument. And I'm going against the top scholars, guys from Yale and Cambridge and Oxford and Harvard, Yale, Cambridge, Oxford. Like, do you know the sad irony about this debate? I never went to school. I couldn't. My life was so very difficult as a young man. I dropped out of high school right away. I had to get jobs and work. I actually could not afford to go to school as a teenager. I also had a lot of problems in school, and I didn't have my father in the house, and my mother was working so much that she just couldn't help me. She couldn't fight the schools and work two jobs at the same time. My mom was alone with 4 kids. And so I couldn't go to school, but I did go to school in the sense that you don't have to pay to go to university. You need to pay for the certificate. So like I would go to York University, for example, in Toronto, and I would just go sit in on the lectures. There's 400 people, 2 to 400 people in these rooms. You think they're checking your ID? So I would go for free and just sit there, and I would ask questions and stuff. And I'll never forget, I was in a philosophy room, a philosophy class, and then I went after to talk to the professor. And then I did this more than once. And then when I went back the second time to talk to the professor's like, are you like, I couldn't find your name, like on, I couldn't find any of your papers that you had, because I would just go to her office and talk to her. I never told her I wasn't like a paying student. Um, and then I told her when she's like, I looked for your papers and I couldn't find anything you handed in. And I was like, oh, I don't go here. Like I go here, but I don't pay for it. Um, so I used to just sit in on lectures, or when I was working, I would download Harvard or Yale lectures taught by the top teachers, like Dr. Bob Breyer, or I think John Hale, I think that's his name, um, and just listen. And I couldn't afford to pay for a university degree. It doesn't mean I didn't go to school and try to learn and try to, but my point is, it's a real shame that all these great universities were founded by Christians for the specific reason to defend Christianity and defend the faith. It's I think it's Oxford, or is it Cambridge? One of them is called Christ Church. So the irony in the modern world is these great schools are the ones destroying Christianity. And if the founders of those great universities were standing here today, they would be rooting for me against the men and women running these universities. That's the irony of this situation, is I'm the one defending the schools that were founded to defend Christianity, and the professors that I'm fighting against are the ones who are dismantling Christianity. Imagine being these Christians from hundreds or maybe even 1,000 years ago who built these schools for the purpose of defending the faith, only to then see into the future that all the people running these schools are destroying it from the inside. Talk about the ultimate act of treason. In my opinion, you should not be allowed to be a professor teaching religion, teaching, theology at these great schools unless you are a Christian, and that the programs are designed to defend Christianity. But it's the opposite today. So that's the reality of the situation and the great irony. So let's go over the preface. If you guys want, you guys can listen to me. I'm just going to read you the preface, and then we're going to end. Okay, so it begins, like I said, it's a courtroom book. I call you, the reader, to take your seat in the jury box. You have been summoned to hear the evidence and cross-examine the buried witnesses of antiquity. Your task is to look at the historical record and render a single definitive verdict. You must decide if the author of the Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts is exactly what mainstream academia accuses him of being: a liar, a fool, and a thief. To understand the immense weight of this trial, you must first look at the world around you. We have stepped into a world that our ancestors could not have conjured in their wildest dreams. We have built machines that tear through the clouds, vessels that plunge into the crushing depths of the ocean, and engines that have rendered the horse, the undisputed king of ancient travel, a relic of the past. We have mapped the stars and split the atom. If we could reach back through time and tell the men of antiquity that we would one day harness invisible waves to relay our voices across the globe in a fraction of a second, that we would hold glowing glass in our hands to project our living faces to the other side of the earth, they would think that we were gods. Yet for all our staggering technological supremacy, we have not managed to break a single cycle of human history. As our world rapidly accelerates in its mechanical and biological brilliance, it seems to degenerate just as swiftly as its soul. As swiftly in its soul. Surrounded by our own manufactured miracles, we have suffered a profound amnesia. We have forgotten the God who once shaped the rhythm of our daily lives. We have traded the quiet strength of humility for the loud, frantic illusion of control. Today, just as it was 2,000 years ago, the men who hold earthly power derive their strength from deception and from fear. And fear, at its core, is simply the weaponization of what the masses do not know. Today, the Western world, the direct children of the Greco-Roman Empire, finds itself trapped in the exact same graveyard as its forefathers. We launch constant failed wars beyond the Euphrates River in the Middle East, bleeding our wealth and resources into the sand only to retreat in total failure. History shows us that every Roman general who attempted to conquer the Parthian eastern lands, the ancient territories of Persia and Babylon that make up present-day Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan, met the exact same fate. They either returned in crushing humiliation, or they never returned at all. This book was written in the shadow of that exact repetition. I watched my own country retreat from the East. Like the citizens of ancient Rome, I have witnessed my childhood friends return bearing the devastating physical and psychological scars from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I have watched us retreat in total humiliation, leaving our own nation broken and in financial ruin. Now, as the ancient fault lines of the Middle East fracture again, the pattern is unmistakable to anyone who has studied the first century. The graveyard beyond the Euphrates has never stopped collecting its dead. In our staggering pride and arrogance, we have forgotten our history and doomed ourselves to repeat it. Here we are, 2 millennia after the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple, yet the roles are tragically reversed. While God used the iron legions of Rome to dismantle that temple stone by stone, we, the modern children of Rome, have become the architects of an ancient defiance. Like the builders of Babel, we have mistaken our own ambition for divine purpose, certain we are finishing God's work, blind to the possibility that we are defying it. This is the forgotten, blood-soaked history hidden on every page of the gospel. When Jesus Christ was born, this was the exact state of the world. He was born and raised in the ultimate borderland, a volatile west against east war zone. Judea was the fragile buffer state dividing two ancient superpowers on the absolute verge of plunging a nation into global war. It was a landscape paralyzed by religious division, crawling with false prophets and fraudulent saviors. Men stood in the public squares promising the people peace and safety, yet delivered only the edge of a sword. History might not repeat exactly, but it certainly rhymes. I began this investigation with a single, highly focused objective. I wanted to vindicate the author of the Gospel of Luke from the unfair, relentless slander of modern academia. For over 100 years, the most credentialed voices in the room have confidently told us that Luke was a blundering amateur, a man who scrambled the timeline of the Roman Empire and placed the wrong military general in the wrong decade. They have sold us this history was a sheer fiction. I set out to cross-examine their claims, to drag their historical assumptions into the harsh light of a courtroom, and to let the ancient stones and the Roman ledgers speak for themselves. But as I dug through the forgotten archives of the first century, looking at the jurisdictional lines and the military maneuvers that vindicated Luke, I found something far more profound than a mere academic defense. In the pursuit of defending a historian, I ended up discovering the untold story of the Nativity. The birth of Jesus Christ and the terrifying realities surrounding Mary and Joseph are the greatest story never properly told. We have sanitized the manger. We have covered the blood-stained floor of King Herod's Judea with polite Christmas carols and quiet nativity plays. But when we examine the documented history surrounding Judea and the broader Roman Empire, the illusion shatters. We are looking at the superpower standoffs, the insurgent mountain wars, the ruthless taxation machinery, and the suffocating paranoia of a dying tyrant. It becomes a story that has no equal in mankind's history. This book was not written from a place of wealth, nor was it forged in the comfortable, insulated halls of an elite university. It was written in exile, in a foreign land that is not my home, by a man who was forced to leave it. It was written under the weight of severe censorship, banned across the digital landscape, with no public voice left to me, and no avenue to profit from this labor. I offer these findings as a witness to a truth that refused to be suppressed. It utilizes the very stones and records of the ancient world to prove that Luke did not invent a pastoral fable. He recorded a miracle that happened in the dead center of a war zone. To pierce that amnesia and shatter that fear, I call you once more to take your seat in the jury box. Do not take my word for it. Look at the coins, examine the military records, weigh the testimonies of the ancient historians against the geopolitical map of the Roman East. You are about to step into the courtroom of history, where the cynical consensus of the 21st century is finally put on trial. The tyrants of the first century threw everything they had at the truth. The Bible still stands. Time kills the tyrant, but the truth remains. The defense is ready. Let the trial begin. All right, so that's the preface. Again, the book is a courtroom theme style book, going over all the evidence. All right, guys, I think we're going to stop there. So that's what the book's about, the son of a god. I think I'm going to change it, born in the shadow of empires. So it's going to be plural. All right, Divi Filius, son of the deified, son of a god. So the Give, Send, Go is up and running. Now, again, guys, I'm starting work next week. Now, unfortunately, last month I didn't get very many donations. I just, it was down, so I couldn't receive any. So I'm actually I'm not in the greatest situation. I'm warning you. I just need to get through this month. And then once I start getting paid, I'm fine. So with this new job that I have, okay, yeah, it's like 40, 50 hours a week, but the boss will let me bring a laptop to work. And once so really there's probably like 4 to 6 hours, maybe only Fridays are going to be hard days, but I mean, I'm going to be able to work from home. I just need to get a new laptop too. And then I can work from the office. So my point is, I'm going to be working full time. So I'm not going to be so dependent on the donations. But my goal is to eventually start taking in enough donations that I don't have to work in freight logistics anymore. Okay? Or global logistics or whatever I'm doing. So the future videos from here on in, I'm going to try my best on the weekends if I can get the work done at the office during the week. Then I'm going to try to upload videos on the weekends, and they will be on the book. We're going to go chapter by chapter. So even before I have the ISBN number, the book is copywritten. That stuff's all done. I'm just, I have to, the ISBN number's there. I have it all. It's just, I need to now submit the final draft of the manuscript, and I'm just finishing the footnotes. And now with the new job, it might take me some time, but it doesn't anyways. It is what it is. So I just want to double check all the footnotes, and then I'm going to start just doing videos on the book and question and answer. So maybe one week I'll do, we'll go over sections of the book. I'll read every section exactly and go over all the evidence. And then maybe the next week we'll do questions and answers on not just on the book, on whatever. You guys have left me lots of questions and answers, and sadly my responses get deleted. And I'm not trying to avoid you guys for no reason. I'd just rather answer your questions in video form. And that way people in the future who might, not see your question and, or my answer gets blocked and banned, at least I can make videos so I give the same answers to everybody. Okay. There's a really good question I want to go over about the Sabbath and working on the Sabbath. And a guy, made he thinks he's got a gotcha on me, and I really want to respond to him. But anyways, guys, so the support is there for anyone who wants to support me. Again, the book is going to be free. If you don't want to read the book, you can just watch the videos. If you know what I mean? If you don't want to buy the book, I'm probably just going to email it away for free to anyone who really, really wants it. And that's it. Okay, guys? So we're going to end there. So that's it. What else is there to mention? Anyway, I think that's it. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching. And yeah, I hope you guys are well.